going on, everybody? Welcome to the Inflow Experience podcast, a strategic podcast for unified communications and contact center success. Also, some other fun stuff. I'm Tarek Sabosic, your Inflow CSM. Shout out to all my customers and clients that are watching, and also host of this podcast. Today's guest, Alex Ball from Genesys. Alex, how you doing? How you
I'm
been?
good. I'm good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Hey, I know that we just briefly talked about where you're at today. I'm sure someone that travels as much as you do, different parts of the country. Today looks like you're in Detroit. I remember that's what you said, right?
It is, yeah. And it's crazy to think this is my first business trip in 18 months, 19 months, something like that. Uh, it's
Are you guys quote unquote back to normal? Are we back on that scheduling of, getting out there and seeing people, seeing partners, seeing customers, et cetera?
we're tiptoeing that way. We'll put it that way. We've got some guidelines in place. I think some really good, really strong guidelines that puts the onus on the team members to make sure that we're taking the right safety precautions, meeting in the right places, and for the right purpose. It's not floodgates aren't back open, but where there's a good business case and there's a good reason to, we certainly have the ability to get out and see customers and partners. And so I'm up here for the weekend. We've got an IndyCar sponsorship that we're supporting, and we've got a couple customers and partners in the Detroit area that are going to come out to the race. So I'm here to play host, and so it's a pretty good business meeting for on the scale of business meetings. This one's top of the charts.
Yeah, I don't know. NASCAR event versus like the usual, gathering at a conference center sounds much better. Sounds something like I would like to do way more than
Absolutely.
the usual task.
And
So,
it's
I
outside. It's at Belle Isle. So it's this little island right off of Detroit. And so it's a kind of an outdoor festival type setup. So it'll be fun. Hopefully, it puts on a good show, and the weather holds off, and we have a good weekend.
Yeah, I know that sounds like a blast. We'll jump into sort of a little bit more down those lines of COVID and sort of how it's impacting Genesis, but I kind of wanted to start off with maybe a little bit of the personal side of things. As far as sort of your position today, I know VP of Sales at Genesis.
Yeah.
But sort of before that, right? Where did you kind of where did you get the first sort of inkling to jump in the space? What were you doing before? Kind of how did we get here, I guess is my point.
I don't know how long you have, but I tell you, it's a cool story, to be honest. So I went to school at William and Mary, which is a small school in Virginia. Um, had a dual major in accounting and finance, and went to work at KPMG. And no knock on KPMG, fantastic organization, but I hated real accounting. I loved accounting in college. It was cool. I got it. My professor was amazing. And I remember sending him an email afterwards. I was like, "You made this seem really fun and cool, and it is not. It was not for me. We'll put it that way." So I lasted a grand total of 6 months at KPMG. And I decided to leave in December, right before the busy season for taxes. So right before things really got hot and heavy. I couldn't cut it on the non-busy time. So who knows what it would have looked like afterwards. Um, but a job opened up at the Washington Capitals. It's kind of a dream job. I'd always been a hockey fan growing up. I was from the DC area, so Caps were my team. And throughout college, I learned how to do websites for basically beer money, weekend money. And so this was a job running the website for the Caps. I was like, this is perfect. Right? It gets me into tech, gets me into sports, gets me into the business side of things. And so I was there for 2 years. Loved it. One thing about sports, you don't make too much money because there's a whole lot of people that want to do it, but it was an awesome gig, great organization. And then my wife and I started a little side business. So we started a side business helping high school athletes get recruited to play college sports. So my wife played field hockey. I was on the track team, both of which are college sports that don't, like, college coaches aren't knocking down your door to say, "Hey, come play field hockey here," right? It's not like football and basketball. And what we learned my wife was coaching high school field hockey as well, and had some really good, talented people on her team, and basically said, like, you can play in college. And they all said, well, nobody's called. And we're like, light bulb. There's a whole market of kind of the non-revenue sports in college, of basically coaching and consulting high school kids to get into college and play sports in college. And so that's we started this company to do that. The very first customer that we had, client that we had, we walked into their house, and we're kind of coaching their daughter on the process. So we're like, all right, so you start with, a whole bunch of colleges, like 50 colleges, right? And then you put field hockey on top of it. So now you're down to like 25, and then you look at the different size and kind of majors, then you get down to like 10. You send emails to all 10, you go visit 5, you get offers from 3, and you pick one. And as we're walking out the door, her dad pulls me aside and was like, you just taught a sales cycle, right? You didn't know that you taught a sales cycle, but what you just taught was a sales cycle. I mean, it was basically teaching college kids to do prospecting, because as what it ultimately what it was. And I remember him saying, like, you should come work at my company. It's not nearly as cool as the caps, right? IVRs and call centers are not the sexiest thing, whereas hanging out with pro sports all the time is pretty cool. Um, and so, but he said, this industry is going to explode, and you could really make a career out of it. And we talked for a little bit longer. He was president of a company called Angel, which is a pretty small company, and which in 2013 got acquired by Genesys. So that's how he convinced me to jump ship off the Caps and join Angel. And by that time, Genesys was already in the process of acquiring the company. And so I came into the business in 2012, and still here in 2021.
Wow. Okay. Quite the breakdown we got to do there. First off, you're from the DC
Yep.
area, correct? So, are you a Redskins fan or a Washington National Football Team
Um,
fan?
yes, I'll say I'm not a huge football fan in general. Here's my Sunday, and all the football fans are going to give me hell over this, but this is how I usually this is how it usually goes. Sit down, grab some pizza or whatever, sit down, turn on the game, switch the channel at halftime, forget that the game was going on because whatever I switched it to was equally as engaging, and then go check the score later when I get the push notification. So I'm engaged enough that I will I'll start watching, but it just doesn't hold my attention. I love basketball, I love hockey. Um, I will say I'm a big events guy, so I'll watch I'll watch all the majors for golf, all the majors for tennis, the Super Bowl, World Series, NBA Finals. Even if I don't follow the leagues the whole time, I love the events. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. The only reason I ask is, I didn't want any conflict of interest to go on here because we got a pretty big time clash of
I'm
teams here. So I wanted to make sure that you weren't
I know enough.
completely on
I
that
know
wagon.
enough about the Washington football team that we're not friendly right now.
Okay, that's fair. As long as you understand that, we can continue
Yeah.
the conversation. Listen, no, but as far as hockey goes, I'm a big Flyers fan. Lived in Philadelphia for a little bit, so yeah, huge Flyers fan. Love hockey. I was looking at your LinkedIn, and I did see the Capitals job that you had there, and I couldn't believe that you made that jump. Right? That sounds like something everyone that's a sports fan, they're like, oh man, if I can get a foot in that door, even if you're in your, mid 30s or even pushing 40s, like, yeah, I'll take that. But someone in, at your point in life, to make that jump, I was like, wow, that must have been some opportunity to go ahead and make him sort of go from one industry to another
Well,
so
and I tell
fast.
you,
So
one of the
I'm
things
sure
that's
that.
really interesting about the sports industry too, and it's not a knock on it, but it's kind of the way it is. So much of the sports industry hires from other teams. So you're absolutely right. Like, getting your foot in the door is the hardest part. Once you're in, you're in. But we weren't in a position from a family standpoint that we wanted to move around. Like, I could have, to progress in that industry and to make the career that I wanted to have, we would have had to move to Dallas, or move to Atlanta at the time, or move to Toronto or something. because the jumps up, the career progressions up happen when you shift teams. And the teams do it for good reason, right? They want fresh blood, they want different ideas, different talent that are coming in, and seeing a different market or different perspective, like what worked in this market that might be able to work in DC. And so, for me, from a career aspiration standpoint, where I wanted to get to, I didn't necessarily see that pathway within the organization. And you're right, it was an opportunity to get into tech. And I'll tell you what it really married was in college, my degree was in business. I love the business aspect of it, but I'm a tech guy at heart. So I love to code and get into the weeds. I'm not very good at it. I can break stuff really easily. Um, but this became the perfect landing spot because I get the business side of working with customers, and I don't have to be an expert. I don't have to know a coding language incredibly detailed, but I know what it can do. And so when I'm talking to a customer and I know, like the on the Genesys side, like our APIs and our capabilities and stuff, I know for a fact that you can connect this to this. If you told me to do it, I could probably do it. It would take me 6 months. Somebody on the Inflow team could probably do it in 6 minutes. Like, I'd figure out how to do it. But just the knowledge of knowing those two things really made this tech space appealing because I got the business side and I got the tech side.
Right. So it sounds like it was a perfect storm, right? Two things came together that, sparked a passion, and that makes a ton of sense. We'll touch on Genesis here in a little bit, but I did want to break that down a little bit further. You mentioned that you and your wife started that business, and it was more of a start from necessity, right? You saw a need in a market, and you were like, hey, we could definitely do this, and that kind of spurred it. So is that something that you guys still are active in today? Is it a side hustle? Does your wife still participate in it? Is it still
I
something
mean,
that's on the agenda?
I the answer probably is no. We still dabble in it occasionally, but we've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old now, so that takes up most of the time. And a lot's changed in the college world over the past 10 years from when we were doing it. And we probably didn't have enough invested in the ongoing changes around rules and timelines and schedules. And so much of the recruiting process is just knowing when the right time to call that coach is, because they can't call you. So, like, there's rules against them calling you, but there's not rules against you calling them. A lot of people don't know that. So we just said, no, you have to pick up the phone and call them, and you get your recruiting process started before anybody else does. So there's like little tricks and stuff like that, but there's so much that changed and evolved. And so we don't, although we still got some friends that of the athletes that we helped, that were clients of ours. They've got brothers, little brothers or sisters that are now coming up. They'll ask questions, but I think we worked with about 20 high school students. 19 of them played in college, and the one person that didn't could have, but wanted to go to Ole Miss, right? And that was their dream. They would have rather had the Saturday football Ole Miss experience as opposed to playing at a smaller school. So it was a successful little business, but mainly it was out of the fact that we just enjoyed working with, and it was great because we went to the games when they got into college, right? We'd go watch them play and stuff. It was a ton of fun.
I know that sounds like a blast. Someone I myself played college sports, right? And I played college soccer for 2 years, and just looking back on that process, right? There's so much that goes into it that a college student, right, let alone someone like myself who came from a foreign background, right, whose parents didn't have maybe the appropriate mindset of what college looks like in the United States, right? So you look at folks like that, students like that, college athletes like that, and that's already a struggle just to sort of navigate that space. And now being someone like myself who's kind of already behind the eight ball, not really having that sort of guidance from the parentals of they went through college, or they saw that, so they can kind of help me. So I could see definitely where a business like yours would come into play. I want to touch more on Genesys and kind of dive in deeper on that. Genesys sort of where it is today, probably a lot different than let's talk about like 5 years ago or maybe even 10 years ago. But so is the space, right? The industry itself has evolved very rapidly in these last 5 years. So I guess to sort of start it out, give us sort of a high level look at sort of what Genesys does, and sort of how you position yourselves, and we can kind of peel it
Yeah,
backwards
so
from
I
there.
mean, Genesis is a big company. For those that are watching this podcast, you probably know because if you're watching a UC contact center software podcast. But for the people that stumble upon it, that are just like, "Hey, what's this? Let's go listen to this." So we're probably the largest global contact center as a service company, really evolving into what we're calling experience as a service. So anything that has to do with an experience that you as a consumer or you as a business have with another business or brand is encompassed into what we want to cover. So the kind of the traditional metrics of calling a support center or talking to a sales team, but now the non-traditional things of what's the push notification that you get when your flight gets delayed, and how does that talk to your hotel reservation saying that you're going to be late checking in, right? How do you marry all of these things together to, as a brand, give this experience that is very unique and differentiated? Um, we're the software behind the scenes that powers those type of interactions.
Gotcha. Where would you say sort of, where the industry is today versus maybe when you first got in, right? What would you say are the two biggest or maybe couple biggest differences that you can point out that just jump out right at you from when you first started, came in, and where it is today?
Yeah, it's funny because when I started as a CSM. So I was a managing accounts, and I remember talking to these customers in 2012, 2013, and it was all about how do I cut costs? How do I cut costs out of my call center? How do I, shift more things into automation, and not in a good way, not in a like in a painful, like I hate pressing one, pressing two, pressing three type way. But that was the narrative. The narrative was I need to cut down my costs. I need to ship things overseas. I need to offshore. I need to, just reduce, reduce, reduce. Fast forward to today, and call centers, contact centers are a core component of the business. They are revenue drivers. They're not cost centers anymore. It's a big part of the strategy of the company. And there's tons of studies, but it's very clear that brands that give great, especially for the millennials and the Gen Zers or whatever the new generation of consumers that are growing up. And I think they're calling the new ones Gen C for COVID. Is that like the babies that are
Is that a
born
thing?
now? I think it's a thing. Let's Google it.
Wow. Hey, you
Um,
learn something new every day.
but the millennials and the Gen Zers and stuff, they spend more money, documented spending more money with companies that give great experiences, with brands that give great experiences. So they are the brand loyalty tied into experiences is incredibly high. And so I think now, the shift from 5 years ago or so to now is a big, big focus on how do we reduce costs, right? Now, how do we automate everything out of the contact center? But is now around, okay, I've got these valuable agents that are sitting here. I've got these valuable resources. Now I need to make them more efficient. So there's still automation in play. There's still AI and there's bots and all this other stuff, but it's not necessarily to replace a person to cut costs. It's to make their job easier so that they can give these great empathetic experiences that lead to brand loyalty, which lead to more revenue.
Gotcha. What would you think, or what would be your differentiators between Genesis and some of the other competitors in the space? What makes a customer come to the table and after seeing all the options, after being consulted on, what makes a customer pick a Genesis platform over a competitor that they've also been reviewing?
So I mean, it's a tough question. There's a lot of things that go into an evaluation. I mean, kind of table stakes. There's probably three really good competitors in this space, us being one of them. And there's probably four or five that are a tier down. So a company that's going through an evaluation is going to look at a strong saddle of companies. And I think we stand out in that evaluation kind of surface level because the product is fully complete. we've got the probably the most complete product from A to Z. From a contact center standpoint, all the different channels that you can integrate. We just launched Instagram messaging, so that's fully integrated now into your contact center. Being able to pick and choose, right? This is a conversation that we have a lot of times with brands. Are like, well, we don't want to give every agent Instagram. Like, not everybody should be responding on that handle, right? So being able to kind of tailor that, kind of post interaction. There's quality management, there's workforce management, there's speech recognition, text analytics, all that type of stuff. It's a very complete product. So from that standpoint, like we check that box. We run out of AWS from a platform standpoint, so reliability and uptime, kind of our architecture is a little bit differentiated, but not entirely. There's some other folks that are doing the same thing. But I think where we really stand out is all the things that surround the platform. And that's really where the experience as a service moniker starts to lay in. And this is a big thing and a big shift as customers move from premise to cloud. I don't know what the latest data is, but I think as of last year, it was still like 72% of contact centers in North America were on premise. They're on some old school premise systems. A lot of that is with Genesys, some of our premise software, right? But the biggest difference between that was a license play, right? You bought it once, you installed it, you kind of owned it. In the cloud, that SaaS type model, the aspects that wrap around the platform are the differentiation pieces. So it's our account management, it's our partner ecosystem, right? I mean, that's just a huge differentiator. I think the way we go about our business, the way we run our business, stands out. Some of the values that we have, and ultimately, at the end of the day, when we get with customers, we find that they buy Genesys because of the people and because of the product and the aspects of the experience that wraps around that encompasses those. And I think that's really where we stand out and we differentiate. That's not as easy to market, right? You can't throw that on a website and say like we've got really good people, buy us. But it shows up in that evaluation. It shows up in the sales cycle and the way we talk to our customers and our partners.
Yeah, no. One thing I'll share there on that point is, obviously my position here at Inflow being a CSM, we touch on various different platforms, right? And a lot of my higher profile customers, they're on Genesys today. And one of the things that really sticks out to me is, in the space and kind of where the industry is today, right? It's still much of a market grab, right? People are trying to get there as fast as they can. People are trying to make sure that they're, gaining as much business as they can because it is still evolving. It's still growing for the most part, right? There's a lot of immature platforms out there, and I don't know if immature is the right word there, right? Maybe they're not up to full
Yeah.
scale, right? But I think the one thing that sticks out in my mind as far as Genesys is concerned is there's a difference between your offerings and your execution. There's a bunch of companies out there that are going to tell you that they do A, B, and C, and they'll sell you a bag of goods, and then once you have that bag of goods, you don't really get the understanding of how do I get from A to B to C, and how does that all work with what I want to do as a company, right? How do my business goals get accomplished with this platform? So, and Genesys does a really good job of sort of providing those overlays in those gaps. There's big deltas from what I see, in my day to day, between what the customer is expecting versus what they're receiving, right? And I think every company deals with those certain situations, right? You're not always going to get 100% right. There's always going to be misses. There's always going to be gaps. But how do you react to
Yeah.
those gaps, right? How do you react to those misses? And I think Genesys does a really good job of listening to their customers. You guys do a really good job of listening to your partners. You're not afraid to sort of take a step back and say, hey, are we wrong here? And I don't want, wrong might not be the word here, but like, are we not looking at this at a certain way that we should be? So, kudos to you and your team for that. It's one thing I did want to touch on because it's something that I do see pretty glaring in the space today because it is, evolving. Every day it's different. So, with that being said, is there anything else you want to share as far as the Genesys team is concerned? I know you guys got a lot going on. There's a lot of initiatives coming down the front. Anything else that you don't want to throw out there while
Yeah,
we're
I
on the
mean,
topic?
it's just a couple things that came up like in what you were just saying, and I think that's it really resonates. What you just said resonates with kind of how I want us to do business and how we do, and it shows up in the fact that like we're not going to win every deal, right? We compete against companies. Some companies will say, yeah, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that, and we're saying, that's not possible, right? You can't do that. And the customers will say, well, these other guys are saying they can do it. I'm saying, well, then you should go with them. And then 6 months later, we get a call back that said, you know what, you're right, dude. They couldn't do it, just like you said. And so I think one of the other aspects that we really want to operate with is kind of a level of respect for the business partners that we have and the customers that we have. Like this space and this industry is so small. It's like there's a lot of competitors, but it's a tight knit community, and so we don't want to burn any bridges. We don't want to cut anybody off, because I've been here. I've been here long enough to know that the relationships that you build in a losing endeavor or an opportunity that doesn't go your way will come back around, and you're going to have a second opportunity at that, as long as you don't burn bridges, right? As long as you operate with a really strong business integrity, you realize that we're just people talking to people. We're just two humans talking to each other. Yeah, the business side, that sucks if we lose, right? I get that, but we're just two people doing business together, and it's not personal. And you operate with a high level of integrity, and things will come around. I think we've done that really well, and we've seen with our partners that that's played off really well. That we've been able to build a strong business, and it continues to grow.
Yeah, we'll touch a little bit more on the partnership side here in a minute, but I wanted to cover real quickly sort of, one of the topics on the podcast these last few episodes that we've had has always been, and I hope that one day soon enough, it won't be a topic, but COVID is still, on top of folks' minds. And, I think hearing it from someone like yourself, right? What are some struggles that, you guys have seen maybe internally that you guys have had to face? Maybe touch a little bit about, what you've been seeing on the customer front. What are the struggles that they've been coming to you guys with? How have you handled those concerns and those struggles, and sort of where are we at today with sort of your approach to COVID as a company?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that most of the companies that were in the cloud remote space fared well during COVID, right? And certainly nobody would say that COVID was a good thing. But we were fortunate to be on the side in which we could help companies out. And there were so many great stories. I think our leadership team, Tony Bates, our CEO, took a really aggressive stance very early in looking in what we had and said, this is a platform that could help companies stay in business, especially in the mid-sized company, the smaller companies that were, pressed for, had to close up shop and had to furlough employees and stuff like that. There was a great example of a travel company that we had just signed, some 350 seats or so. And their business is doing curated travel experiences for retired people overseas. The worst possible business that you could be in from a COVID perspective. And, I remember they called and they said, we don't have revenue coming in the front door anymore. The whole business is gone, but we have a ton of calls because everybody wants their money back and everybody wants to know what's happening to the ship. So they're like, we can't turn it off, but we also don't have the money to float the bills at the same time. And as that kind of microcosm of an example, and I think how we approached all of our customers, we said, look, we want to help you make it through this pandemic and come out stronger on the other side, and we want to be your partner then. And so we took a very strong approach, very empathetic approach with our customers to work with them through that time period. I'm happy to say that customer is still rocking and rolling. They're still in business. They're tweaked and a little bit leaner than they were before, but we're still partners, and we were fortunate to be in a strong position. And we took a pretty aggressive approach quickly. We shut down the offices quite early. Took a very employee centric approach to the response, which I think everybody really appreciated. and are now just starting to tiptoe back into how do we operate in the post-COVID world. I don't want to say the new normal because we're not in post-COVID. It still exists. It's still around. And but how do we do it in a way that is responsible? And I think we've got a pretty good plan on that. So
Yeah, you touched on that travel company there a little bit. That's just one example, and I know you probably got a ton more that kind of go down that same path. But that's that when you tell me something like that, that's something that like a white glove, niche small company would be able to provide, right? They don't want to lose customers, so they get strategic in that sense. That's not something that you necessarily see someone as big as Genesys do, right? I mean, a lot of the times companies that grow to the size of Genesys today, especially with considering the size versus the space that they're in, they kind of fall deaf on those concerns a lot, just because of the fact that they really don't have to allot those reliefs over, because at the end of the day their bottom line is probably not going to be harmed too much. So to hear you guys were able to get nimble and kind of provide those reliefs over to companies in tough spots, right? That's just another example, I think, of you guys sort of quote unquote doing it right. And
and what was great was we tailored that to the industries, right? The enterprise business, the Fortune 100s, they had the balance sheet to still support the initiatives that they were. Their initiatives changed because they viewed the shutdowns and the office closures as an opportunity to make the changes that they've been pushing off for so long. And so, our approach with them was slightly different. But I remember Tony, our CEO, got on a call with me and basically said, "Hey, your market, right? The mid-sized companies, those 300, 400 seats, which are big companies, but um, they're the ones that are going to be feeling the pain the most. How do we work with them different than how we work with the Fortune 100s, right? So I think we took a really strong approach to say it's not a one size fits all. It's not one policy that paintbrushes everything, and took a look at the different markets that we operate in and that we serve, and came up with a different program and different response tactics for each
yeah,
one.
I think a lot of that speaks down to sort of what you touched on earlier, right? It's that quote unquote moral code, right, of doing business. It's we have tons
Yeah,
of customers come to us and say, hey, we're not gonna be able to pay the bill this month. Like, it's not something that we're gonna be able to do. And you either understand those concerns and you can relate to them, or you don't, right? There's no gray space there, right? You either understand and you're empathetic of folks in those spots, or you're not. And there's no better way to show that you understand than by kind of forking over that relief to them. So that's just another example of the proof is in the pudding, right? We're not just sort of saying these things. We've been out there. We have a track record that's proven, and it's not the first time that that we do it. And hopefully in the future, when we do have instances like this come up, customers are in the understanding that they know that Genesys is a company that is able to do that and help their customers. So I'm really excited that you guys were able to do that. We did have partners in the space and other competitors as well that could have done a better job in that front. And this is just me speaking candid. I'm not here to poo-poo anybody or anything like that, but it's reality, right? Some did a great job at it and some didn't. And I think not just in our space, but I think in any space down the line when we come through COVID and, I don't want to say get back to quote unquote normal times, but when we do get to that point and we reflect back on these companies, I do hope that that's something that's resonated with customers and even
yeah,
people that it's potentially going to be customers, right? How did these companies react when things got tough, right? What did they do? And, I look at the very basics, right? You could look at, for example, fast food joints, right? Where were the deals, right? Where were the deals? You can get the 2 for 2
yeah,
or get the 4 for 5, right? What were companies doing in that aspect? Or you look at malls or even online boutiques, right? Where were the savings? What were they doing? And I think those things they always get kind of forgotten once things get back to quote unquote norm. But I do hope that when we kind of reflect and we have these conversations moving forward, right, that we really do place an emphasis on sort of, hey, when things got tough, this is what we did, to give them sort of an understanding of what we can do in the future, right?
yeah, definitely.
I wanted to kind of touch a little bit more on the partnership side of the house, and you did mention that one of the things that Genesys does really well is you involve the partner very early on, and you're very collaborative in that front. And I know you guys through the App Foundry, you've done a great job of making things very accessible to customers and even to the partners as well. So tell me a little bit about, how does Genesys pick a partner? What does Genesys view a successful partner, and sort of what's the most successful way that Genesys views doing business in that sense?
Yeah, so I mean, we're definitely, so just kind of background for my personal side of the equation. I lead a team of about 40 sales reps in North America, so covering what we call our mid-market commercial type business. But for some, those are pretty big companies. Um, and we're very partner centric. I mean, we're doing greater than 75% of our business with our partners. And in many cases it's co-selling. I mean, it's figuring out where do we play well, where do the partner play well. So as far as how do we pick, I mean, I think we try to look at the opportunity that we have, the customer that we have, what other systems do they have, what kind of needs and requirements do they have, potentially geography, where they're located. Um, and that's really what highlights a lot of the partnership plays. And I remember having like a conversation with a customer. Actually, it's an Inflow customer as well. But I remember having this conversation before they were an Inflow customer, and we were recommending Inflow to join into the relationship. And she came back to me and she said, "Why would you recommend a partner? Can you guys not do it yourself? Like, why do you need a partner?" And I said, "We can do Genesis incredibly well, right? It's what we do, it's what we make." I said, "But your world is not just Genesis. It's Salesforce, it's Oracle, it's this, it's that, it's homegrown systems, it's different integration points." I said, "Partners are going to add so much value to all the other stuff. And they also know Genesis really well." And we're still there to support them. So I remember, one of my mentors is actually the guy that brought me into Genesis, the guy that we first uh, was our first client at our side business. He was the one that said a cloud that stands alone and touches no other cloud is pretty worthless. The whole purpose of being in a cloud is being able to talk to other systems and other clouds and really to drive those integration points. And that's where one of the huge values of partnerships come into play, because you've got all these companies have so many different systems and they all need to talk to each other in some way. And yeah, we can do that, but we've got limited expertise in some of the other platforms that partnerships have other gold sponsorships with, Salesforce or Microsoft or any of these other systems. So there's a usually when we get into a conversation with a customer, we get a feel for the lay of the land, and it's pretty apparent pretty quickly, is the partner gonna add value here, and if so, what's the right partner based on the different systems they have, the different languages they need to speak, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think, for the points that you make there, I think, all of it kind of comes down to, you do what you do really well, and the things that you can't, right, you need to understand that you don't, right? And it's not that you don't do them really well. Like you said, you could handle probably, 90% of that ask, 80% of that ask, but at the end of the day, right, is the customer covered in times that, you're going to see that gap. So I think you make a really good point in, sort of understanding where a partner comes into play. And I think that's one of the great things about working with a company like Genesys is, you guys know what you do really well, and the things that, you might or may need help on, where to go to. And I think when you have that sort of process in place, it's very easy to, have that customer experience turn out to be a positive one as opposed to a negative one. So at the
Yeah,
end of the day, I think at the end of the day, right, we both agree that the customer experience is all that matters, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that
100%.
customers at the end of the day, they're going to get what they need, and at the end, do they see what they were sold coming to execution and being kind of that package that they dreamed to be in the end. And I think, for the times that there are misses, and there's going to be misses, like I said, you have a great process in place for that as well. So all in all, I think it's a fantastic solution. And then, we touched a little bit on the partnership. I know that Inflow has been, very closely tied to the hip with Genesys for a good time now. And I want to just kind of touch on that a little bit, as far as sort of how did the relationship get started. You kind of mentioned to me a little bit about your first meeting with Mike. Tell me a little bit sort of
Yeah.
how Inflow came to the table and kind of where we play with you guys and sort of how you envision that partnership sort of excelling in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't actually remember when it started. We Genesys and Interactive Intelligence merged in December of 2016, and I think there was an existing relationship between Interactive Intelligence and Inflow. And so when I stepped into that side of the business, and really into the Genesys cloud world, that's where I first started to meet with the team at Inflow. And they were Genesys was really taking a bigger focus on partners, and basically went around the room. The sales leaders went around the room and said, "Hey, we need a sales executive sponsor on every partner." And I said, "I'll take Inflow because they've done a bunch of deals with us." And so I got introduced to Mike and Travis, and got to went out to Portland for their kickoff event when they had their partnership kickoff and the QBRs, and we really hit it off. I mean, I think Mike and I are very similar. Kind of we talk the same. We have the same kind of uh, moral values and compass, and we mesh really well when we jump on calls with customers. So we really hit it off. Inflow is absolutely one of the top partners in my business segment, which again is kind of that commercial, kind of that sweet spot, which is the biggest volume of business in North America. And and you guys crush it. I mean, it's so awesome to have a partner that is open and transparent, but can also do it on your own, right? I mean, we've got customers that they don't call us anymore. They just call Inflow because they're the best of the industry. And we've got one mutual customer that when they do reference calls for us, they always say, "You got to buy it through Inflow." It's I mean, it's one where they do a reference for both Genesys and Inflow at the same time, and that's the dream customer, right? That's the experience that we're shooting for, is customers that'll scream from the mountaintops, "This is the best product, and this is the best team to support it, implement it, run it, all that type of stuff." So
Absolutely,
I
couldn't
mean,
agree more.
it's a critical partnership. It's one that I know is growing. I'm really excited for the expansion of Inflow. Kind of the new news that you guys have had over the last 6 to 12 months. I think that's gonna just add more fuel to the fire. So I'm really excited about the future. Genesys is pivoting as a company, not pivoting, but we're leaning in hard with partners. We're going big with partners. This was the first year partners were at our kickoff, right? So they're just as much employees as our employees are, and I certainly view the Inflow team as an extension of my team. So I'm really excited about where we're taking it.
Absolutely, and I know that we feel mutually the same. So I'm glad the partnership is where it's at today. Every time I interact with you guys, it's a good experience. So I want to talk a little bit. You touched a little bit about mentorship. That's been another sort of trending topic on the pods. Is kind of having someone to sort of not necessarily guide you through your professional life, or maybe it's your personal life, whatever it may be. But you sort of touched on the gentleman that first introduced you
Yeah.
to, I think it was Angel, right?
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit about sort of kind of how that mentorship sort of transpired, and kind of where is that today, and then maybe if you have another mentor as well, sort of just kind of give me sort of what your understanding of where your mentorship has been in your career, and kind of are you a mentor to someone today, and sort of kind of what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you, it's something that I think about a lot, and I don't know if I have a different view on it than others, but I'm of the opinion that having one mentor is a weakness. I want to have five, right? And the key thing there is I want to be able to snip. I want to be able to take advice from mentors with a grain of salt and really evaluate it through my lens of how I would operate, right? So certainly, I mean, I can think off the top of my head. There's probably five or six that I lean on and that I go to for advice. So Dave Renison, who was the CEO of president of Angel, who brought me into the business. He was a general manager of our cloud at Genesys for a long time. Is now the CEO at Success KPI, which is a NetFoundry partner that integrates in with Genesys. So he and I have a weekly one-on-one. We talk every week about business, right? Because we're partners in that sense, where their product is an enhancement to the Genesys product. But we also talk about personal career development. I lean a lot on my current boss, Rick Brown, who leads North America, and he and I have a great relationship. So being able to talk to him about things that you typically wouldn't think about talking about with your boss, like struggles with the job or challenges that you're facing. He's super great to bounce ideas off of and really coach me in my development. And then I look outside the company too, so I'm still close friends with our former executives. I have a 6 month check in with them every 6 months or so, just to plug in, see how things are going, and get some advice and get some coaching and guidance. And the thing that I like about that is I get a lot of different viewpoints. A lot of people, and I'll say this broadly about mentors that are in leadership positions. Some of them, and I'm lucky to say that mine aren't in this boat, but some of them that I've worked with before, they'll give you advice, but they're self-serving advice. And so, they're giving you advice that then benefits them. And that's not a bad thing if it also benefits you, but that's where you kind of have to look at it through the lens of how this, what the advice that you're asking for, and how does this affect me, and how does it affect everything else in the equation. And so that's why I like having a handful of people that I can call on for different situations and different advice. Some of the individuals have been in similar roles, so I'll get both viewpoints, kind of see where there's alignments and see where there's differences, and look at those and kind of weigh them and evaluate them. But I'm a big fan of having several different mentors. Um, Certainly, I lean on my parents for stuff. Maybe not so much in the sales world, but my dad's a successful businessman, and my mom is chair of about 100 different committees and stuff. So she's got the leadership capabilities, and my dad has a tremendous business acumen. So I lean on them a lot. My wife is another one that lean on a lot. But I think there's so much in creating almost like a mentor team, that you can go to in different situations.
Yeah, I'm glad that you touched on, the parents there and the wife as well, right? I think a lot of times when people hear the word mentor, right, they think, oh, it's got to be someone that's super successful. It's got to be someone that's, carries a big title. And really, I think at the end of the day, a mentor is someone that you
Yeah,
trust, right? I think trust is a key word there. And, for those people out there that, in my opinion, the reason I touch on this topic so much is, I think mentorship and mentors in general are invaluable. But I do think that's also something that these days is in my opinion, happening less and less, right? I think the more we get into this sort of, individualistic sort of approach to business and personal life, right? It's so much easier today to start a
yeah,
business, right? You could do it, within minutes, right? You can go online, you can secure a domain. There's businesses out there that will help you do that, right? There's a plethora of ways of doing things on your own, right? That's kind of the thing that's in today is doing it on your own and being self-made. And I think in that sort of journey, for that, self-satisfaction and success, I think we kind of lose a little bit of that, relying on others, trusting others, because like you said, right, it comes down to perspective. And if you're not getting other people's opinion and other people's advice, you're only going from one perspective, and that is your own. Not saying that's wrong or right, right? You may be the smartest guy in the room, I don't know. But from a general look, I tend to be that person that if I do think I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm probably
exactly. I'm,
wrong,
I'm with you on
right?
that. I'm
Um,
with you on that front. We need to change rooms.
100%. So yeah, I'm glad that you touched on that because I think a lot of people out there are, they're searching for mentors, or maybe they're a little bit lost, but and they don't realize that they got one sitting back home with their mom and dad or their brother, or maybe it's their wife. So I think that's a really good outlook, and I do appreciate your insight on that. Um, as we kind of wrap this up, I kind of want to get a little bit more from you as far as sort of, what makes you kind of, tick? What makes you go in the morning? What makes you wake up? What's the motivation behind Alex Ball?
So there's a lot. I mean, I'm in sales. So I'm motivated financially. I want to be successful, and I've got a lot of motivation to take care of my team. I genuinely love my team. I'm very fortunate to work with such a great group. Like I said, we've got about 40 sales reps and sales managers and solution consultants. And I think we've built a really strong culture, and it's a group that I'm incredibly passionate about. And so my, my job is basically to try to eliminate barriers for them to do their job. And that's really where, um, you look at the titles as people move up the ladder, and ultimately at the end of the day, it's the people, in front of customers that are making the magic happen. It's people like me. Is all we're supposed to do is just get out of the way, let them do their thing, and when they bubble something up that says, hey, this doesn't work, or we need to change this process, or we need to improve this, that's where it's our job to kind of make those improvements. um, but kind of from a long-term perspective, I want to be a chief revenue officer. I want to be running the customer side of a business. And so that's what gets me fired up. I love to see different types of businesses. That's one of my favorite things about the job that I'm in is, as a sales leader, I get to spend a little bit of time in a ton of different companies and just see how they work, how they're different, how they're unique, what different companies cultures are like. And I made one post on LinkedIn. It got it. I don't want to say it went viral, but it was the most liked post that I ever had, which was I walked into the executive conference room of this company in Southern California, and all around the room were life-size Marvel Comics mannequins. The business had nothing to do with entertainment or comics or anything. Literally, the executive was just a really big fan of these things. So the decorations in the conference rooms were that. And I said, you know what? Walking in here, this is a fun environment. Your business has nothing to do with any of this stuff, but it's cool. And it just made me think, like, that's a really different approach. And so I love being able to be in so many businesses and the relationships that I've formed. I mean, I've got customers that have become really close friends, customers that have met my family and gone on trips together and stuff like. So it's a fun business to be in, and I've got big goals and aspirations of continuing to grow, and the plan is to continue to do that within Genesys. So I've been here for almost 10 years and had 5 different jobs. So it's a place that we've been able to move around and see different places and travel. And I think the good news is that there's enough opportunity within this space and within the company that you can plot your own career path and not have to change too much.
Any any insight or any inkling to get back into the sports industry at all?
No, not get back into it from that way. I'll tell you, what I remember, one of the perks of working for Monumental Sports, which is owned by Ted Leonsis and his group. And he's one of the only sports owners that gave all the employees tickets. I mean, so as an employee, I get 2 tickets to every game. Now I couldn't always use
Wow.
them because I was working the game. So I had a lot of friends that were now really good friends because they wanted the tickets. Um, and so I think if I ever got back into sports, it would be as a season ticket holder that I would get to go to all the events and actually enjoy them. But yeah, no interest in jumping back into that unless I make just a ton of money and I want to buy a team. But that would be pretty ambitious.
Hey, you let me know when you get to that
Yeah,
point, and
exactly, exactly.
I'll hook right on to
We'll
you.
have we'll have we'll have plenty of podcasts to talk about between now and then if that ever happens.
Absolutely, I'm your guy. I'm your guy. Hey Alex, I want to thank you for the time today. I genuinely did appreciate it. I genuinely did enjoy it. Anytime that we can get someone like yourself on to get your insight into the industry and into COVID and all the other stuff that we talked about today, it's very invaluable. So I do appreciate it. I hope you had fun, and
Absolutely,
I do hope that we can do this again sometime.
definitely. We got to do a round 2.
Yeah, maybe we'll do this one in person. Maybe next.
Love it.
Hopefully, maybe somewhere tropical with a nice maybe like Staples Center approach. Maybe we get a ticket, something like
I
that.
like that. We do.
Not trying to put ideas in your head, but just giving you a few.
We'll do it. Yeah, I think that sounds like a good plan. We got to do it
Alrighty.
at the we got to do it
Uh,
at the Indy 500. That's where the magic happens.
you let me know when, man. You let me know when. Send me the itinerary, and I'm there.
Sounds good, man.
All right, my friend. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
You bet. For everyone out there that's listening, hope you enjoy the podcast as well. You can catch us on all the major platforms that you get your podcast from. I'm Tarek Spasic, your host, and we'll catch you later. Thanks, everybody.